this is your last public meeting before you return back to the Philippines after a very successful 6-day visit here to the United States. Mr. President, many of us were at the Ayala, the Philippine Development Foundation dinner last night. And at that dinner, you asked, why is it that even though you were able to secure $430 million in Millennium Development Corporation grants and $2.7 billion in investments to the Philippines, there are still people who are complaining and attacking you? And you surmise that your father told you many years ago that it's because of the Filipino crab mentality. And as you proceeded to tell the story of the Filipino crabs, you noticed that so many people in the audience was already familiar with it. I just wanted to tell you, Mr. President, that about 30 years ago, I wrote the article about the Filipino crabs in the Philippine News. And so when I heard you mention it, I was very excited. It was not original. I had heard a La Raza professor talk about it regarding Mexicans. And I know Africans have talked about it the same way. The only difference is that the Chinese, Japanese, and the others have succeeded in empowering themselves in the US, but we, even though we're more than 4 million, have not succeeded in getting a Filipino elected to the state assembly or to the state senate because of this crab mentality. And we believe that you were talking about how we can get rid of this mentality so that we can empower ourselves. And I want to tell you, Mr. President, that after your mother passed away in August of last year, many of us held a mass at St. Patrick's Church, and from that, the group that you see before you, representing many of us, formed the U.S. Pinoys for Noy Noy Mar. And we campaigned all over Northern California, and we became a national organization with chapters in 12 cities around the country. We would now like to be able to present to you a photo book of our activities in the last year, signed by many of our members. And I'd like to call on Charito Benipayo, our treasurer, Emmy De La Cruz, and to please present this photo book of our activities, and also the program that holding here is the, as you know, Mr. President, right after you won, about 200 of us, members of the U.S. Pinoys for Good Governance, went to the Philippines to attend your inauguration. And while we were in the Philippines, we convened the Conference of Overseas Filipinos for Good Governance, and we converted the group from U.S. Pinoys for Noy Noy Mar to U.S. Pinoys for Good Governance. And in the course of about a month and a half, all our chapters around the country participated in a telephone conference call meetings to hammer out what the goals and objectives of the U.S. Pinoys for Good Governance are. And I'd like to call on 6 of our members to please come to the microphone because they will each mention what the goals and objectives. I also want to tell you, please, Charito, please announce what we were able to get also.
Just briefly, we were able to get the 501c3 tax exempt for U.S. Pinoys for Good Governance, and we were approved by Secretary of State, and we are all over now. So here we are, we come, and now we will continue to forge for our President, Noynoy Aquino. Here are our missions and statement for you to hear us.
Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Linda Tionco Galion. I'm a commissioner for the Daly City Libraries. Number 1, educate the Filipino-American communities about the principles and values of good governance.
Yes, Mr. President, we plan to hold community conferences around the country where we will propagate the principle of good governance so people will start talking about it and subjecting their politicians from the Philippines to good governance principles. Number two,
Mr. President, Phyllis Guerra from Victoria, Tarlac, Yucabalen. Number two, in close alliance with NGOs and media groups, promote good governance principles in the Philippines and encourage vigilance to protect the welfare of the Filipino people, look after the interests of those with less in life, and inspire the public servant to keep his oath to serve the country honestly.
that's number two. Number three,
Good evening, Mr. President. Ophelia Cherniser, a Bicolana and coming from Sonoma County. Number three, encourage Filipinos who are U.S. citizens to apply for and obtain dual citizenship.
yes, we want to increase and multiply the number of dual citizens. Now that people know there is a very good reason to apply for dual citizenship. Number four,
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Perry Diaz. I'm the publisher and editor of the online news service Global Balita. Number four, encourage Filipinos to register and vote in the Philippine elections and be a partner in the efforts to make the election process be available to every Filipino.
yes, that's something we pledge to do. We want to double, triple the number of registered voters, but in order to do that, number five is necessary.
Hi, Mr. President. I'm Amy De La Cruz, and here's number 5. Seek amendments to the Philippine Overseas Absentee Voting Law to eliminate all provisions that discourage overseas Filipinos from registering to vote.
As you know, Mr. President, the law contains a provision that permanent residents must sign a covenant to return back to the Philippines within 3 years or else be subject to criminal penalties. And that is a poison pill amendment that discourages a lot of immigrants from registering to vote, and we hope that that is eliminated in a bill. Thank you. Number 6.
Good evening, Mr. President. Hermes Sunga, Council Member in the City of Vallejo, President of the Filipino-American Chamber of Commerce of Solano County, also a Cabalan from Macapebe, Pampanga. To present, promote, and participate in just, sustainable, and transformational projects of the government and non-governmental agencies that promote good governance, benefit the common good of the Filipino people, and provide opportunities for empowerment and civic engagement.
Thank you. And that's what we plan to do in Filipino-American communities throughout the United States. And now, one of the things we want to be able to do is hope that your office will be able to provide a liaison to the volunteer groups in the United States and around the country, so that if we have suggestions, issues, we know whom to contact and who can be able to contact us about some of the initiatives that you're taking, that we can, outside of the consulate and embassies within the Filipino communities, work on that. And to elaborate on that, I'd like to call on Mr. Wally Reyes, the chair for Southern California.
Good evening, Mr. President. Before we begin my discussion on that particular subject, as a co-convener for the recently concluded Overseas Filipinos Convention in Manila, I would like to personally apologize, as well as the group to apologize, for the unruly behavior during the July 1 photo session at Malacanang. It is a laughing matter, Mr. President, but you see, there is a relationship to good governance and that particular incident. In fact, during that particular time, we had a 9-year-old boy who was present in that particular event. And one of the TV anchor persons saw him crying. So the anchor person went to him and said, "You must be overwhelmed by the presence of your president and the adoring fashion in which the overseas Filipinos are giving him." And the boy looked at her and said, "No, they are mobbing my president and I pity him."
Oh.
Based on that, we decided to pull back and say to ourselves, if we are advocating good governance, then we should have the behavior to follow good governance principles. And so we said, probably the first thing we have to do is look into ourselves, examine what good governance is in relation to each and every one of us. Because if we are going to teach good governance to everybody, we might as well practice good governance first. And so, as an initial salvo, we went out last night. We networked with the One Filipino members. We reached out to them and said, hey, you want a message to be relayed to the president? What is it that you want the president to know? And they said, please relay to the president that we, young second and third generation Filipinos, are going to expand our membership, and we are going to help him build a better Philippines. As we started going into that process, we said, hey, let us first of all make sure that when we do good governance projects, we are in parallel moves with what the government is doing. Because we have heard a lot of incidences in the past where projects are initiated and never are completed because of bureaucratic red tape, because of other anomalies going on. So the project is started, funds are remitted, but there are no completion of projects. So we said probably the best thing to do in the area of good governance is to come up with a mechanism in order that both government and private sector can run parallel lines. And at the crossroad, come out with a system in which both the government and the private sector can come up with the right mechanism to ensure good governance. We have here the document done by FSGO, and I think this was presented to you by FSGO. I was fortunate enough to get this because I'm a member of FSGO. Now, we believe that what has to be done is found here. The what is absent is how to do it. And we're looking forward to your administration to provide us the beacon in which we can go through the process of interacting with the government in making sure that whatever processes or whatever projects we initiate are followed through and completed all the way. We have here goals of 2013 and 2016. We intend to go through and make sure that these goals are met during that time frame. But we need a beacon coming from your administration. Help us come up with the processes, procedures in order to ensure that we have a cooperative venture between government and the private sector. And as we say in our school, ad maiorem Dei gloriam, let us be men for all seasons. Thank you.
And women as well, let's make sure. Okay, and now I'd like to also introduce to you the national chair of the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations, the largest federation of Filipino-American organizations in the U.S. Past national chairs included Loida Nicolas Lewis and Alex Esclamado. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Greg Macabenta.
Magandang gabi po, mahal na Pangulo. Doble po ang karangalan ko at swerte. Sapagkat kahapon ho ng umaga, kasama po ako sa reception line na bumati sa inyo sa Seafood City, kasama ni Fernando, Subel, Vicky Garcia Terena at Caloigo. Ngayong gabi, ako po